Hi everyone, Sanal this side and welcome back to your first game series. So in the last video what we did was to create all of these animations that you see right here in the last video. So now what we are going to do is try to use these animations while you're controlling the player, and for that we are going to use the animation tree. So this video is all about the animation tree and the state machine that is used inside the animation tree. So in a nutshell, there are two types of state machines. One is to control the animation, right? And the other one is to control the player itself, the code, the player logic. So these two are separate things, but the concept of state machine is common to both of them. So in this video, what we are going to do is use the state machine in the animation tree. So that is the one that is controlling the animation. In a separate video, I am going to cover the state machines with the player itself. It's going to be a great video. So one more thing before we get started is that by the end of this week, hopefully I would have started my own Discord server. So make sure to join that. And yeah, anything you want to talk to me about Godot or in general, I'll be available there. So let's get started. So till now, you see this is our player, this is our palm tree island. Now for controlling all of this players, what I don't want is to hear this animation or the sound effect of these assets or these collectibles. So what I'll do is, first of all, I'll just toggle the visibility on that, save the scene. Later on when we are actually creating the whole level, designing the whole level, we'll use that there. So let's get back to the pirate itself, and in this we have this animations. Okay, for this we are going to use a new node. So click on this plus, add a child node. This would open this and search for animation tree. So the very first thing that you should observe is this error, some exclamation mark. That means that there is some issue, but that issue is basically that every animation tree needs to be associated with an animation player. Additionally, it should be activated. So here, if I just zoom out, you see on the right we have this tree root. So we have a lot of options which we can select. We have this animation player. So if you click on that, what that would do is open this, and in this I can choose the animation player that I would be assigning to this animation tree. So I'll double click on that would. So there is still this error, and the reason for that is we have not defined a tree root. So let's click on this and let's go over some of these options present here. Okay, so first is the animation root node. So I have no idea what that is. We are not going to use that. We have a blend tree, again not used in 2D game development. So majorly what you'll use in 2D game development is these three: blend space 1D, blend space 2D, and node state machine. So we are going to use this state machine one, but blend space 2D and blend space 1D is generally for blending of two animations, although blending does not make sense in 2D game development, but in 3D it definitely does. Because let's say if you're jumping and you have a moving left or right animation, what you could do, you can combine or blend between both of these animations, so it looks like you're going left as well as you're jumping. So that is just for a combination of animations, but we are going to see how are we going to use this blend space 1D and 2D in our particular example. So let's start with the state machine, and what I would do is zoom out, Control S to save. Okay, now after doing this, what you would see is this animation tree panel or window. So if I click on that, you would see something like this. So you have a start, you have an end. So technically in this video, since we are not having the state machine of the player, all the game mechanics, so we are going to have a very basic layout which we could easily tweak in the later parts of this series, but this would give you at least enough idea that you can start doing everything on your own. So yep, that is currently about it. Now let's go over some of these properties. So if I just zoom here, this is the select and move node. So if I select this, I can actually drag and move the elements here. This is what create new nodes. So if you click on this and if I press anywhere, it would give you the options of adding animation, adding blend space 1D, 2D, blend tree, or state machine. The same option that you saw while selecting the tree root. Okay, so that is about that. I think you're not able to see this. Yeah, okay. The next option is this one, which is the states or transition function. So you have a couple of transitions. One is immediate, sync, and at end. So more or less what you would use is this immediate and this at end. So transition to a different state immediately, or after finishing the animation, or after syncing some part of the animation. So that is one thing that you should just know about. Again, you also have this autoplay on load or auto advance, not exactly auto advance. So yeah, okay. So by this, what it does is, let's say to change a state, technically what you would have to do is press some or the other key on your keyboard. But what do you want is, sometimes when the game starts, it should automatically travel to that particular state. So that is for that. Now on the right hand side, we have something known as play mode, travel or immediate. So we are not going to see a lot of this in this series. Okay, now the next thing that I would like to cover is, what is a state machine, right? Talked a lot about state machine, blend space 1D, 2D. What is a state? In a nutshell, state is concept that gives you a boundary of what all things you can do and what all things you cannot do. And state also has the option, if you take a particular action, where would you end up? So for example, you have an exam. So you are in a state where you have to give an exam. You have not given it yet. You have a couple of options. If you study, you would get a good grade. If you don't study, you won't get a good grade. Given the state you have to give an exam, there are two possible actions, either study or don't study. So if you study, you would get to a new state where you have passed the exam. Or if you don't study, you have failed your exam in a very raw sense. So passing and failing is a state, and the starting state, which is you have to give an exam, has a particular options. If you are in the state of you have to give an exam, you have a very limited set of actions. Either you have to study or you cannot study. Now, once you have passed the exam, studying or not studying doesn't make a difference, because if you have passed, you have passed. If you have failed, you failed. You cannot change the outcome after that. It's the same idea, but I might have confused you. So let's see this in action. So first of all, let's do the running thing. So once we see how one of these things work, then we'll actually create the whole animation or the whole state machine for this player. So I'll right click here. Okay, so first I'll click on this one. If I right click, that would give me the option to add a node. So technically what I would do is add another state machine. Inside I would add two blend spaces, and inside those blend spaces I would add the animations. So this is going to be way complicated, but let's just go with the blend space 1D. Okay. So now what is this node? Blend space 1D. So you have one dimensional. So one dimensional means there would be a single value that would be controlling what is happening because of this node. So let's click on this node, or click on this edit blend space 1D. So once you do that, you would see a panel like this. Now the very first thing that you would do is, for any 2D game, any pixel art game, change this continuous to discrete, because if you do continuous, it would automatically try to merge the animations, and in the end you won't see a difference at all. So it is very important that you do discrete. That is one thing. See, now you have a couple of options. One is the snapping option. So this is point 1, good for us, and this is for creating points, this is for moving points, and this is set the blending position within the space. Okay, so what I'll do is click on this create points, and on the leftmost side I would just click here, left button, and I would do is add animation. And for this, what I want is the run animation. So doing that, you would see this, there is this keyframe type of thing right here. Similarly, on the right, I would do the same thing, add animation, and I would do the run animation. And in the center, I would add the idle animation. Now you see there is something known as value 1 and -1. Now what I would do is I would create a variable, or I would use a variable that is already declared, and depending on that value, I would either show the run animation or the idle animation. And now that gets extremely interesting. You would see how we actually use this. So given this, what I could do is go back to this root. So that would take me one step up in this tree, and let's add some arrows. So from this start, I would automatically drag this like this, and that would create an arrow. So that is immediate. So I can just save the scene, and now what you see is your character is actually running. And why is that the case? Because your animation tree is active. Click on this, that would actually stop the animation. So if you keep this active, it would all automatically show the respective animation that is currently running. So keep this off for now, and let's start with the scripting. So if I click on scripts, and if I go down, we have to change this animated sprite to just sprite 2D, because we are not going to use this animated sprite. So what I'll do is, first of all, I'll just duplicate this line what is the shortcut? Okay, this one, and I'll just comment this out. So if you start this statement with a hash, that is called a comment. And in programming, comment is something that would not be executed while running that sequence of code. So you could write any explanation, definition, whatever you want to write, or maybe some comments for the other programmers that you're going to work with. Now what I'll do is I'll change this to just sprite 2D similarly. So to duplicate this, press Alt, Control and the down arrow, so that would duplicate it, and press Control and / to comment out any line. Now I would change this to just sprite 2D. Control S to save, and let me just try to run this game and see if everything is working fine or not. Okay, so you see currently, although I have minimized or toggled the visibility of the assets, the collectibles, but I'm still able to collect them. So I'll just close this. At least the game is working fine, so it is flipping correctly. So I'll go to this palm tree island, and for this what should I do? So let us just delete all of these collectibles, and yeah, okay, so Control S to save. If I go back to the game, I can go left, right, and the flipping is done properly. Although we are not able to see any animations, that is fine. We're going to change that later on. So let me just close this. That is good. Now I just said that handle animation, right? We are not going to use this anymore. So what I'll do is I'll comment all of them so that the code is still there for your reference, but we are not going to use this. Now this is also throwing an error because there is no more a function named as handle animation. Comment this out as well. Control S to save, and let me just check if this is running properly. Okay, that is good. Close this, and now what I want is to access, what do I say, this pirate, this animation player through my code. So what I'll do is I'll select this, drag this here, hold Control, and then leave my left mouse button to directly have this on ready before this animation player. So that is good. I'll just organize it like this. Okay, we have this. One more thing that you see, this is not active yet. Okay, so for this, what I'll do is rather than activating it here in this inspector, what I would do is function, and I would use a ready function, and in this I would say animation player dot active equal to true. Save this, and what that would do is when you actually start running the game, automatically activate this animation player. So Control save. Let me just see if this is working fine or not. So yeah, this is good. Let me just close this, and now you would see some issues with the VBox. I have no idea what this error is, but there's something known as call deferred. So we'll do that later on. But regardless of that, the code is functioning well. So I can enable and disable this from the inspector, or I could just call this from this. So what I could do is just click on this blank space 1D twice, and that would allow me to rename that, and I would rename this to ground movement. Press enter, and that is good. Now if I go to this pirate and this code itself, I would have to write a function that would actually handle the animation. So let me just write a function which is function handle animation tree, and that would take nothing as an argument, nor it would return anything. So I'll just write pass for now. That is fine. And now what I would do is actually call this in this process function. So handle animation tree. Control S to save, and we are good with it. Now if I go to this animation tree, and on the right hand side, click on this root motion, nothing there. So if I click on this parameters, you'd see there is a playback animation, but now you see something known as ground movement, which I just renamed, right? If I click on this, I have a blend position. Okay, so let me just open this animation tree, this ground movement, and this blend space 1D. So this value that you see here, which would actually control this, is this blend position in this ground movement. So what I would do is I would just minimize this and go to this handle animation tree, and in this what I'll do is I'll say animation player or and animation tree. So sorry, in this we don't need the animation player but the animation tree itself. So sorry, my fault. And let me go handle animation tree. So this is handle animation tree, and dot, what you do is press dot set, and what you set is a property and a value. So the property is this. So I'll take this and just place it here. That would automatically copy the relative path and paste it here. And what value do I need to give it? For this, blend space 1D, I only need a single variable that would handle this blend position. And for this, for the left and right movement, I'll use the velocities X direction. So I'll save this and let us run the game. So if I do that, that is an issue. Okay, so we don't want this animation player in this ready. We want the animation tree. Control S to save. Okay, now if I press play, see, now I'm showing the idle animation. But if I'm going right or left, this is actually working fine. So now we don't have to write the code or handle the logic of going left and right. So if I go right, left, and even in the air, I can see the walking animation going on because we're not controlling that right now, but we are showing the idle and the run animation, and that is because of this animation tree. We are setting the blend space in this animation tree. Okay, so forgive this error for now. So we are manipulating the velocities X direction at this blend position, and depending on the velocity dot X, if it is -1 or +1, or if it is anything other than 0, it is showing the running animation. Otherwise, if it is 0, we are showing the idle animation. So that is how you do. So now to make this one step ahead, what I'll do is go to project settings, and in the input map, where is this input map? This one. What I would do is I would add a new action, and I would call this what do I say, pick, or I'll say sword. So there would be an action named as sword. So the job of this is to switch into sword mode or no sword mode. So for this, I'll use a new key, which would be Z for now, and press OK. So what this is doing, that later on we'll delete this, but the logic is this: once you have a sword, you would have a different set of animations to be played. Once you drop your sword, you would have a different set of animations. So for now, just because we don't have a sword ready yet, we cannot pick or drop it right now. I just want to assign it a key, which is Z, and accordingly we would pick or drop the sword. So given that, I'll close this and go at the top and create a variable as sword, and this would be a boolean which would keep track of if you have a sword or not. If at any point of time, I'll just duplicate this, and if just press is sword. So what that means is, that means you have, if has sword is false, this should become true. If has sword is true, it should become false. So in a way, you're picking and dropping that sword given this Z key. So what I'll do is I'll say has sword is equal to not of has sword. So if has sword is true, it would now be updated to false. If it is false, it would be updated to true. So I'll save this and go back to my animation tree, and let me just run this to see if this is working fine. So I can go left, right, and pressing Z, nothing happens, but it is not throwing an error as well. So let me just add a line, save this. Let me just minimize this, and let's look at this animation tree. So press Alt Z to text wrap. So if I go into this animation tree and we are in this ground movement, so I'll just move one step up. So in this, I'll say this is basically sword or move without sword. Okay, so this is move without sword, and once I did that, your parameter has changed, right? This, so you would have to update this path. That's not a big deal, but let me just show this now. So I'll add a new blend space 1D like this, and I would rename this as move with sword. Doing that is good. So if I go inside this, I can click here, right click or create points, click in the center, add animation, and I would add the idle sword. Click here, add animation, run sword, click here, add animation, run sword. Okay, Control S to save, go back to this root, and now you have move with sword, without sword. So if I go to this animation tree, you would have two possible blend positions: move with sword, move without sword. So depending on the property, that if you have a sword or not, it would change, but how it would change is defined by us. So I'll click on this connect nodes. Now the way I would connect is I can move without sword to with sword and with sword to without sword. So you see, you have a bi-directional movement going on inside of this. So if I click on any of this, if I click on this select and move nodes. So I can click on any of these transitions. So if I click on this transition and click on this advance, and in this expression, what I'll do is move with sword. So this would have the animation when you're moving with a sword. So when do you go move without sword? Is when this has sword is actually equal to false. So once has sword is equal to false, you go back to moving without sword. And in this arrow, if I click on this, if I click on advance, and in this Control V, if has sword, I don't need to check for equality, or if it just has a sword, you move from without sword state to with sword state. So in this, I can just rewrite this as not like this, but not of has sword. So this is just an expression that you're going to put, just a Boolean expression, and that would do the job. So Control S, and before running, we need to update this animation tree. So I'll just remove this blend space parameter and click on this animation tree, click on this blend position with sword. So I'll select this, drag it here. I'll duplicate this and just remove this one and drag the second one here. And both of them should be affected with the velocity's X direction. So you see, the value of these blend position would be dictated by velocity.x. So moving with sword or without sword does not affect the animation that is to be played while going left or right. So if you're moving left or right, you need to play the idle animation or the run animation. Or if you're staying still, you need to play idle animation. Just which animation is to be played is determined by this state machine. So Control S to save. If I just run this, now you would see the magic. I can go left, I can go right, I can jump. Okay, so jump, I don't have any animation for jump, but now if I press Z, just look what happens. I press Z and nothing happens. So there is an issue. So Alt F4, close this, and let's see what is the issue. So in this physics process, has sword is equal to not has sword. So initially it is false. So let me just print it that has sword, or I should just print the has sword thing. Control S to save, run this, press Z a couple of times, close this. So false, true, false, true, false. So this is has sword is being updated, so that is fine. So there is not an issue with this animation. Okay, so there's not an issue with this input map. So let's try to go to this animation tree and see where is the issue. So animation tree is also active. I think I found the error. The error was with this advanced expression. So click on this, change this to pirate. Now why do we do this is because given this arrows, right, we have used these expressions no sword and has sword. So if I go to this animation tree again, click on or hover over this, you would see the path to the node used to evaluate the animation node expression if one is not explicitly specified internally. So we are using these expressions, right? And for these expressions we need, where are we trying to access those values from? So we are trying to access those values from the pirate because this is the pirate script, and in this we have defined this has word. So that was the thing. I did a lot of changes, but don't worry, everything is fine. And now what we'll do is actually create the whole working or functioning of this layer. So what I'll do is I'll select this one or click on this node, delete this, click on this node, delete this. So you'd be like, what did we do exactly? So because I deleted everything. So let's start with this again. So I'll right click on this, or if you are on this, you could just left click, and what I want is to add another state machine. So this would be a state machine inside a state machine. So this would be for, okay, so let me select this one and I'll just align this like that, and I would rename this to ground movement. Okay, so when you're on the ground, you have to do these things defined in this state machine. I'll take this and just create a transition from this immediately. Nothing to worry about. So if I click on this again, or not this one, click select one and edit ground movement, I would again see the same thing, the same state machine, but this is nested. So now in this I would create a blend space 1D, which would be no sword, and there would be a new blend space 1D, and this would be named as sword. And what I would do is I would just arrange them like this, and let me just place it there. And in this, this is the no sword one, right? Change this to discrete, click here. Okay, so add a point, add animation, add the idle animation, add animation, run animation, same thing that we did earlier. Add animation, and this should be what? This should be the run animation. So that is good. Go back to this ground movement. In this sword one, edit this to add animation, idle sword, add animation, run sword, add animation, run sword. Now blend space to discrete and go back to this. Now how do you travel from these state machines or these states? Select this one, transition is immediate. Go to no sword or the sword, depending if you have a sword or not. So something like this. This would be your state machine in this. So I'll just place this in somewhere about there. There would be no end in this ground movement. So given this, from the start you would go to no sword if you have no sword. So if you have no sword, you would directly go to this no sword one. And if you have a sword, you would go to this directly, the sword animation. So if has sword, you'll go this one. So let's select this sword to no sword. So in this, if you have dropped your sword, you would go back to this no sword one. And if I click on this advance, and in this one you should have a sword. So has sword, so Control S to save. So this would be your ground movement. So go back to your root and we are good to go. Now again, I need, whenever you change this, you need to change this handle animation tree. So I'll press Alt Z to, what do I say, to text tab. And if you see, I have used something as set deferred. So you could just use set deferred. I just was trying to figure out some of the issues, but there should not be an issue. So if you go back to this animation tree, you see you have a ground movement. In that you have no sword and sword. So for this, the first one, I'll remove that, and what I'll do is take this no sword blend position, place it there, and add a comma. Similarly, I'll just delete this and duplicate this line and change this to sword one. I think that is good. Now if I play this game, I would start with the sword. I could go left, right, and if I press Z, I would drop my sword. Go left, right, and jump. Sword, no sword, sword, no sword. So that is good. This is working. Now what's next? We need to figure out a way of jumping, right? So let's go back to this animation tree and let's just drag this up, drag this down, just organize it the way that you like. And I'll create, right click, add animation or add a state machine. And this would be the jumping. So for what this would do is handle the jumping animation. So I'll take this arrow, I can go here directly to the jump. Now I won't go back from just jump to ground movement yet. We could, but we won't. But for the moment, let's have this one. So when do you actually go from ground movement to jump? So given this arrow, I go to advance, and what I want is this velocity of y is greater than 0. So by this I mean whenever the velocity of y is greater than 0, I'll directly transition to this jump animation. If velocity of y is 0, that means we are in the ground animation. So if this is greater than 0, and what do I do? So let me just think about it for a moment. So let me just have this velocity dot y in this and in this as well. So that means if it is not 0, we are going to this jump, and velocity of y is equal to 0, we are going back to this ground movement. Okay, so let me just edit this jump because I have no animations, right? So I'll do the same thing, right click, add blend space 1D. I would name this as sword, add animation, or not animation but one blend space 1D. This would be no sword. Just align it like this, add all of these arrows like this, and what I would do is let me just interchange this or add arrows in between. So I'll go to the sword animation when I have a sword, right? So let me just copy this, has sword. So if I have sword, I'll go to this one. If I don't have a sword, I'll go to this one. So if I have a sword, I'll go to this one. If I don't have a sword, I'll go to this one. Fine. So let me just add the animation. So click on edit sword, click on this, continuous to discrete, and now you can only have two options in this one. So if I right click here, add points, right click or left click and add animation. Now in terms of game development in Godot or 3D graphics, if you go up, your Y actually decreases, right? If you go down, your Y actually increases. So if my value is negative, that means I'm going up. So in this, I need to show the jump animation on the left, and if I click here, add animation, I need to show the fall animation on the right. If I go to the jump one, edit this, add a point, add animation, this would be jump sword, this would be add animation, this would be fall sword. Control S to save, and now we would have to add these properties. So I'll just duplicate this line, go back to this animation tree, and you see now jump has no sword and sword. So for this no sword one, I'll just first of all I'll remove this path and then I will paste this path. Now I'll duplicate that and I'll just rename this from no sword to this. Now for jumping, I have to see that the velocity of not X but velocity of Y. Control S, and now if I press play, if I jump, I am showing the jump animation, and I can at any point of time I can drop or pick up the sword while in the air. So that is what we wanted. So there are some errors, set frame index p. Okay, so I'll leave that for now. I'll debug that later on because I don't know what the issue is. What if I just change this to set itself, not set deferred? Let's see, will that make a difference? So let's just run this. Jump, drop sword, big sword. Okay, that is working. Close this. Okay, still some errors, but okay. Okay, what should we do now is set frame index p frame is 3 and p frames and h frames is 3. Okay, so I think there is an issue with this animation itself. So if I go to this animation player, animation, and in the jump one, right, I drag this up 3. So there are 3 frames, right? 1, 2, 3, 4. I think I have 4 animations. So if I delete the first animation, nothing. Okay, so wrong one. Second, third, fourth. So let me just delete this fourth one, and similarly in this jump sword I'll delete the last frame. Control S to save. If I run this, jump change. Okay, Alt F4. Okay, so no issues anymore. So this is fine. We've figured out the issues as well. I had no idea, but somehow we did it. Okay, that was for this blend space. So what I'll do is I'll change this hash sword initially to false, and I want you to observe one thing. If I press play, let's see what happens. If I jump and land, see, it's very mechanical, right? There should be a bounce with this player. And why am I saying that is because you do have you do have an animation which is for this bounce effect, this ground one, this 2 frames. So there is this animation that is for this squeeze effect of that player. So keep that in mind. Let's go back to this animation tree and let's see what could we do in this. Okay, so we have ground movement. We can jump and place this end to the right, and what I would do is I'll create this let's say state machine, and this would be named as bounce, let's say. And what you would do is before going back to this ground, you won't go here, but once you are in the jump, once you're done with that, what you would do is first you will go here and then you will go here. So once you have completed your jump, you'll for a moment show this bounce animation. So after you're done with this jump, so velocity of y is now 0. So you have to go to this transition. So if I click on this one advanced expression velocity dot y is equal to 0. So once you're in the jump, velocity of y becomes 0. So you go to this bounce. What I'll do is, rather than naming this as bounce, I'll name this as landing. That is a better description. Now in this one, I would have same thing, add animation, not a blend space, but it is about the ground, right? And similarly, I would add another animation, be the ground sword. Now the way this would work is this. First you'll go to either the ground one or the ground sword. So this would so select this. So you would go to this ground sword if you have a sword, and if you don't have a sword, you'll go to this ground one, the plain without sword one. But you'll take this arrow, and now using this, not immediate but at end. So that means once you've played this animation, you go to this end. Similarly here as well. So once you're in the ground, you'll just do a bounce, go to the end. If you're in the ground sword, you'll do a bounce, go to the end, and go back to this route. And given this transition, this should also be at end. So switch at end. So you see this arrow, this triangle, and then this vertical line, that is for showing this at end. So Control S to save, and let me just play this. So I'll go up. See, once you go up, you come down, there's a bounce. Finally you see there's a bounce of a short period. So if I have the sword one, I have the same thing with the sword thing as well. So that is just a small detail that no one would notice consciously, but it would make a lot of difference for the player's experience. Okay, so this was about this one. Now let's add the attacks. So I'll go back to this animation tree, and we have in this animation player animation, we have two types of attack. One is the air attack, one is the normal attack. So let's do that. This is going to be very straightforward. So I would go back to this animation tree, and I would right click or select this one, add a plain space, or I would add a state machine, and I would name this as ground attack, and I would have another state machine. It would be air attack. So depending on where you are, you would transition into one of these animations. So for this we need a new variable, var is attacking is equal to, or bool equal to false. Okay, so is attacking is false. So if you are in the ground and if you are attacking, you would go to this ground attack. But if you're in the air while you're jumping and then you press attack, you would not do the ground attack, but you would do the air attack. So I'll just give you a very brief idea about how you do this. So I'll go into this, and what I would do is transition immediately, and I would come back at the end. Similarly in this one, you come back at the end, but you go into that immediately. But in this if I select this, and you advance when only if is attacking is true. So if it is attacking, you would transition into this ground attack or the air attack, and then you would come back to this ground or this jump one, and accordingly once you do that, you do the landing and get back to the ground. So let's just edit this ground attack, and what I would do is, first of all, I would add animation attack 1, add animation attack 2, add animation attack 3. So let me just place it properly, and what you have to do is you should just transition to any one of them, okay, and immediately, but at the end you would go back to this end state. Now there is an issue, because when you start, which attack do you choose? And that is something that we are going to see and manipulate through code, but not in this video, but yeah, later on. So go back to this route, go into attack, add animation air attack 1, add animation air attack 2, and transition immediately to air attack 1 and air attack 2, and I'll just transition at end to this end state. Fine. Now that is good. Go back to this root. Now one more thing, given this is attacking and it should have a sword, right? So you cannot attack if you don't have a sword, so you should have a sword and you should be attacking, and then and only then you would do the ground attack. Similarly in this one as well, and you should have a sword. Now for this I'll go to project settings, input map, add a new action, attack, add, and for this one let me add the X button. Okay, now what I'll do is press play and see if you are able to do this. So I don't have a sword, so I'll press X but nothing happens. If I press it, I have a sword, but if I press X again, nothing happens. Why? Because we are not updating this is attacking boolean. So if I make this to true and run this, and if I get the sword, see, this is actually trying to attack. So I have a sword and attacking is also true. Press again Z, this is going again. So if I jump and press Z, that would show the air attack one. So I can just close this because this is not something that we want. You can set this as false, and that is good. Is attacking is false. So now in this one I can just, okay, it's already been a very long video and I'll continue this coding part in the next video. So thanks for watching. By the time that you get this video, more or less I would have created my Discord channel, so be sure to check that out, be a part of that community. And yeah, that's all for this video, and I'll see you in the next one.